Welcome to Village Square Africa. I am Keminni Amanor. Today on the program, we want to talk about why Liberians are protesting in their country. We'll get behind the story that you may have heard already as we discuss economic, governance and electoral issues in that country. Stay with us for that conversation. But before we do that, as always, we'll bring you the headlines from across the continent. This is Village Square Africa. Stay with us. Last weekend, on the streets of Monrovia, scores of Liberians chanted slogans and songs at the Weah Suffering Rally. Their message was simple and straight to the point. We Tiya Suffering, which loosely means we are tired of suffering. The protesters say they are tired of the misuse of public funds, corruption, and top of their list, the worsening economic conditions in the West African country. More than 60% of the country's population lives below the poverty line, a situation further worsened by the global economic contraction brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. The protesters are also angry by the president's expenditure on travel, while important sectors of the economy are left underfunded, pointing to his recent 48-day trip outside the country. During this period, President George Weah visited Qatar to watch his son play for the U.S., a trip that was funded by taxpayers. Upon his return, Weah said the trips around the world are of national benefit. He reassured the public that developmental deals are on the way, according to local media. But to the Protestant opposition, he said, and I quote, "Do not break down the country with your too many protests. It is the common people you are harming. If you feel we are not doing well, go to the ballot box and not the streets." End of quote. I will leave that to your interpretation, but I'll say this. Weah is right about one thing. Liberians go to the polls next year when Weah hopes to score a second term. How this affects his chances, or whether there is a worthy opponent, is why we are discussing Liberia today. I am Keminni Amanor, and you're welcome to the square. Also joining our gathering are Hanson Blayon. He's a political analyst. He's joining us from Monrovia, Liberia. We also have Adam Kine, who is a political analyst, also joining us from Monrovia, Liberia. And then there is Ambrose Kamara, member of the Alternative National Congress, joining us also from Liberia. Gentlemen, you're welcome to the square.
Thank you.
Great. Now,
Thank
Adam,
you so much.
Wonderful. Adam, I want to start with you. Look, we're seeing multiple protests since Weah became president. Started off in 2018, only a year after he had taken over from Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. What is this? Is this a sign of bad leadership or a growing democracy in Liberia?
Well, actually, I think in every democracy, we must practice our human rights, and some of the rights of the citizens is to protest. And protest comes when necessary, when the citizens are speaking and voicing out their concerns. However, our recent protest, I think, needs to be politically analyzed from different perspectives, because as an advocate, I am also concerned about the dividends. What do we have from the protest, and what are the benefits that we have gathered from the protest? It is obvious we have to practice our democratic rights, but we need that analysis. And we need to know why protests have been staged, especially in Liberia at this moment. And so I think that's my point of view that I want to stretch for.
I'll come back to you for more. I'll move on to Hanson now. Hanson, what is at play here? Bad leadership, growing democracy, or maybe both?
So, well, thank you for the invitation. I'm truly excited being a part of today's conversation. So, as to your question, I think the issue of gathering politically is it give a constitutional right to everyone who want to assemble as it relates to institution. Once they pass through the regular channel where they are under the regulations of the law that try to protect them, they have the right to assemble and to champion whatever they want to give their cause to. So I think it is democracy, so they have the right to gather, but in gathering there are rules and regulations need to be followed. Where in security law, security authorities need to protect them as well. That's what they are going to protect on their rights. So I think it's also regards to their own sort of whatever cause they have to tell government about themselves.
Now, before we go into the matters that have been raised by the opposition parties that went on the demonstration, I just want us to touch briefly on President Weah's response to the protesters, where he says, look, this is rather harming people who are, common people of Liberia. The ballot will be the best for this. Adam, what do you think about what the president said upon his return?
And continues to, I think one of the greatest message that the president continues to send to the Liberian people and opposition is that the maintaining of peace within this country is very essential. And so whatever the protest should be or whatever reaction to the government, it should be done in a peaceful manner. And I think the current government have done very well in protecting the democratic rights of its citizens to protest. And again, like I told you, I think this protest needs a greater bit of analysis. We need to analyze it because it could have been a national protest that speaks to the hills, and especially according to them that there was misruling, it could have been that way. But as we noticed, the protest that really occurred in recent time, it was more politically driven, and not only politically driven, but it was one party construct, one party advocacy, one party engagement.
So talk to us about why you think this was politically driven.
Well, it was politically driven because if it was a national concern, then all of the Liberian people should participate. It should not be one political party. And T-shirts that were printed doing that, or rather should not be bearing one political opposition picture. So as you would notice, the rally had a political leader picture on it. We are tired of one political leader leading, and he's breaking away from all of the other opposition. They even stray away from this protest, and that's why it wasn't well attended. But if we, as a Liberian, want to protest and we are saying we are tired because of whatever the condition or the ill is, then we must all come together. It should not be. So I saw the rally go like a political campaign. That's what I saw it like. And even the return of the president coming in is almost like fueling the ruling party as well, filling the entire airport and church and the ruling party office. So it's almost like, I think Liberia is expecting election next year. It is like the election or campaign already started. That's how it seems like to me in Liberia. It's like the campaign already started.
But the issues that have been, but Adam, the issues that have been raised though by the protesters, it's something that affects all of Liberia, except, the point is that the economy is not as bad as, the opposition would want Liberians to believe.
Well, Liberia is on a going struggle. We all know it is almost Christmas. The ordinary people are struggling as well to get food on their table. The economy is a little tough. However, like I said again, if we as a Liberian, I think we need to really think about what we really want. How do we want it done? If we want it done, it should not be driven by under a political construct. I think it should be done by the masses saying we are tired and coming together to really protest. But it should not be a political party. Yes, there is struggle in the country. Everybody knows that as a result of the global crisis, there is impact in every African country. Liberia has its own unique suffering. So if we have that suffering, then if the masses must come together, it should not be, again, politically driven. It should not, people should not be wearing a political a candidate T-shirt to protest. I think
I see.
if we are tired,
I'm going to come back to you, Adam. I'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Let's go to Hanson. Hanson, does that position resonate with you that this protest was to score political points?
Yes. So the thing is, the Constitution, Article 15, gave every person the right to freedom of expression. However, you have the right to freedom of expression. Yet, it's good. The protest is good, right? But under the motive of politics, the way they put the protest need to be, we need to understand what the objective of the protest. Because the protest, in my mind, it should be like an initiative, not when the political leader is spearheading the protest and he financing it, and to the extent his name or neither his face is on a T-shirt. That alone speaks volume. Like there's a hidden motive behind this protest. I believe the failure of the gallery not after their motive is because of it was politically driven, like Professor Adam Kam said. So I believe that if Liberia is not exception to other African countries around, going through or major changes as well in terms of poverty. Every African country do have their own sort of unique stand of poverty and financial crisis. But however, I think there's a level of the peace everyone wants to maintain. And in a quest for individual political goal, but in terms of people needs to understand that this country belongs to every one of us. So I think it's from that background that this particular We Tiya Suffering, it was single-handed by our own political institution who want to brand itself as a god to the people. I think it's based on the background that people, the turnout wasn't well properly because it was politically driven and it had a highly motive, which is highly political.
Very well. Hanson, stay with me here. I want us to now analyze the Weah administration the last 5 years or so. What would be your analysis of Weah's leadership?
Well, I cannot tell you that his leadership was qualified. If I can remind you, there are some challenges he met into power. And because with this transitions from former president Elijah Salif with we are coming to the picture, Liberia had a lot of challenges, and he's trying to fix them. He's trying to bridge some of the gap. However, he's not doing everything. But I think with the strive that he's doing to meet up with this goal, with the milestone of the country, I think he's doing a little well. And despite politically, people say he's not doing anything, but he's doing something. He's trying his best to improve and to put the country on the counter power for the African country as well.
All right, Hanson, I'll take the same question to you, Adam. What would you say Weah's leadership has been like the last 5 years?
If I were to evaluate President Weah's leadership, I think there are some lapses, there are some success stories that we can count on, and more often or more or highly than that, I think there is a need for growth. So we cannot enter the next, if you were to win next political season or next year, I think there's a need to improve whatever governing system that was set in place. I think there's a need to reinforce accountability.
Well, I think we lost Adam there, but we're talking about the Weah administration in Liberia. The Weah administration was officially sworn in 2018, although the election itself was won in 2017. I'll tell you more about the Weah administration, but let's listen to Adam on his analysis of how good or bad the Weah leadership has been to the Liberian people. Adam, we lost you there for a bit, but go ahead and make your point.
Yeah, what I was saying is that every government has its good and bad, and I think the current president needs to surround himself. One of the first things I would submit that he needs to surround himself with, I think, people who have the country at heart more than what we have seen in previous years, and he also needs to work on accountability. Enforcing that, if you say you would do what you say you would do, you should do it, and it should not be party driven. and that I think he's done well to bring the country together, but I think we need more of that, because I think what we're hearing more is more party driven than having the entire nation involved. And I think Weah wants to do that, but I think those that surround him are not giving that chance for it to happen. And all of this in corruption, there need to be a thorough policy and regulation put in place to regulate corruption, because I think having America coming in to sanction some of our government officials when at the expense when the government should have done it, I think it shows that there is a need to work on that. He's doing well. He has brought the country. He has the country at heart. Again, the only suggestion that I would make is to have the right people around him so that we make a decision that will impact the little people. I think the leadership has been up here too much. It needs to calm down to the ordinary people, like teachers getting good pays, police officers in the street getting, the necessary thing. The woman selling in the market is economically back, and a little package helping those small businesses in Liberia. I think if we start growing Liberia, if he start growing Liberia from down upward, then Liberia will be a better country, and then he will have a better political leadership. But we cannot keep the leadership up here all the time, where people are getting rich all the time. So that I think those are things that he needs to consider if he must win next election.
Right. I'll come back to you, but right now let's welcome Ambrose Abu Kamara, member of the Alternative National Congress, joining us also from Liberia. We already began the conversation, but Ambrose, I'll come to you now. Your party ended up being the front runner in the protests that took place over the weekend. Talk to us about the reactions that have come up since then, particularly from President Weah, who thinks that you are distracting affairs in Liberia. Hello, Ambrose, are you there? Ambrose, can you hear me? I'll take the question again. I'm asking what your reaction is to what the president has said about the protests that your party and a few other opposition parties went on over the weekend. Well, I don't think we can hear him, so I'll move on to Hanson now. Hanson, we've just started an analysis of the Weah administration. You mentioned earlier that you think that the Weah administration is trying. Now, talk to us about some of those things that you think the president has done well by the Liberian people.
Well, basically, some of the things you have done well is the issue of rural connectivity. And is one of the key things, which of course is part of the PAPD, as well, the appropriate agenda for prosperity. Additionally, the issue of security and is not really intact, but is actually also striving to maintain that. And the issue of peace is very cardinal on the present agenda. I'm not elected official spokesperson for them, but I'm a citizen as well, student as well, go to the university. We ought to try to understand what is the government roadmap, which of course I think from this standpoint they are striving to bridge the gap. The issue of education, despite education, the sector is still a huge shortage to young people. But yet then still, there are still improvements. So all of the sector is going through a tremendous growth, but based on those who work in the sector to cooperate with his leadership and to bring forth that legal expertise or the technical expertise in or lifting the institution, neither the inferior agencies to a better level. So I think with this level of the president agenda, I think it's a good agenda, which of course is trying to model and implement, but it's not all well. There are challenges there. And in the midst of the challenges, there are achievements.
Those challenges, Hanson, I want us to look at each one of them, the economic challenges, the corruption issues, and then also issues around commodities or, the minerals that Liberia has as natural resources. We'll look at those things. And also, if you're waiting for the conversation about the cost of the trips, we'll have it when we return. Stay with us.
Okay.
Welcome back. You're watching Village Square Africa. I am Keminni Amanor. Today on our table, we are discussing Liberia and fallouts from the protests that took place there over the weekend. Still with me are Adam Kine, a political analyst, Hanson Blayon, also a political analyst, and Ambrose Kamara, who is a member of the Alternative National Congress. All three gentlemen are joining us from Liberia. Thank you so much for your patience. Ambrose, my understanding is our connection to you is great now, so I'll start with you in this segment. Now, talk to us about your reaction to what the president has said regarding the myriad of protests that have taken place since he became president. Hello, Ambrose. I think we lost Ambrose, and so I'll go right on to the conversation. And Adam, I did say that we'll talk about those challenges. So let's talk about the economic conditions of Liberia now. How bad is it?
Liberia is at a moderate relative to the economic situation in Liberia. I think the Liberians are very concerned and know that we cannot depend on government to survive. So if you will notice in Liberia, there are a lot of businesses. Everybody is selling something, want something to survive. At first, it always used to be like people depending on government for everything, like looking up to government. But I think the world has evolved, Liberia has evolved. So even the little people in the street are selling to get a little thing for themselves. So it is at a moderate level relative to the suffering. But we cannot ignore the fact that there is a global challenge that is affecting. For instance, rice price used to be $14, but now it is now $17 to $18, $19. And it is not because of Liberia, it's because of the global crisis. So I think Liberia is at a moderate level when it comes to the poverty, especially the economy. Yes, people are suffering. Of course, in that moderate arena, but yet I think people are taking action. My advocacy is, what are we doing? What can we do to alleviate some of the suffering? And that's why I expected the political rally that went on, or the protest that went on, to suggest. But you cannot have a protest where you have only one person t-shirt. If I was a part of another political party and see another person picture, a political leader picture on another person or a rally, then I think that it is politically driven. If you want to have a We Tiya Suffering protest, then let everybody wear their ordinary clothes. Even if it's just white t-shirt, we just all go in the street and say, yeah, we're tired. But you cannot politicize it. That's what I think my emphasis is. Yes, there is poverty everywhere, in every part of the world. There is poverty, even in the United States of America.
Very well.
The economy is even,
Very well. Hanson, one of the reasons that have been given for the difficulty in turning around the economic situation in Nigeria, in Liberia, I beg your pardon, is corruption. And as you said earlier, a bit of accountability. Now, talk to us about why you think that for a president who came to office on the promise of tackling corruption has not been able to do that up until now.
Is that me or Hanson?
Oh, that's for Hanson.
Yes. So she said she could tackle corruption, and at the end she said corruption is a vampire. So coming to the transitions of the current president, President George Weah, it's true that he failed to tackle corruption, but with the institutions of the Liberia anti-graft institution, with the LACC, which have the sole jurisdictions to fight corruption and to prosecute government officials involved in the corruption, is the major challenges as well. But I think the reason is because people who involved in the corruption, in the government officials who've been embezzling the state resources, they compromised. So as a result, there have been no further information, or neither they are not going to go to a exclusion level of due process. Obviously, as you were aware, the U.S. government put sanctions to couple Liberian government officials, which of course now raised a lot of eyebrow to a lot of people now to look further as to how we can also bring forth others who are involved in today. But it's not just about other countries bringing sanction on our leaders before we take authority and prosecute them. But I think the issue of corruption is something that have been is something that the government of this current president is fighting to tackle. And I believe in my mind that the president cannot tackle corruption because with the issue of corruption, it's something that is in every sector of the government agency, and they cannot just issue it. Even if they will tackle it, if the Liberia anti-graft institution with the LSCC, they need to have full prosecuting power to bring government officials, institutions involved in corruption to bring to justice.
I wonder what can be done to be able to tackle corruption effectively in Liberia. But I'll take your thoughts on that, Adam, right after this. Now, news happening now in South Africa is the final day of the ANC's National Congress in that country. What you're seeing now, live pictures from South Africa. It would appear that there's some sort of jubilation over there. Remember that Cyril Ramaphosa remains leader of the party, which means that he gets a shot at a second term as president of South Africa. He beat former health minister Zweli Mkhize in that contest. Two others did not run after they denied nomination from the floor. So those are live pictures. We'll bring you more of. Well, my understanding is because Ramaphosa is on, we'll take a listen and then come back to our Liberia conversation. Don't go away.
I just want to come and say, I love my president. Tiya Matamela, Tiya! Second term, Matamela, second term. I love you, President.
If you were not a man, I would say I love you too. Viva Kosatu, viva. Malibongwe. Malibongwe. Igama lamakhosikazi. Roar, young lions, roar. Mandla. National Chairperson Gwede Samson Mantashe. Deputy President Paul Mashatile. Secretary General Fiki Lembalula. First Deputy Secretary General Nomvula Mkonyane. Second Deputy Secretary General Marupini Ramokhopa. Treasurer General Dr. Gwen
President Cyril Ramaphosa there speaking to the gathering of ANC members at its national convention in South Africa. This is the first time the president is publicly addressing a huge gathering of this nature since, he won the elections in the country. And well, as I said earlier, this would give him a second term as president. But right now, let's go back to our conversation on Liberia. But don't forget that we'll go back to South Africa. There'll be more on South Africa a little later. But right now, the focus is Liberia. Still with me are Adam Khan, he's political analyst, and Hanson Blayon, who is a political analyst. Both of them are joining us from Liberia. Now, Adam, I was on you. I was asking you about what could be done to make sure that corruption is tackled effectively in Liberia.
Well, the first thing we will understand is that corruption is endemic. It is within every fabric, every construct of the Liberian political system. And to have it alleviated, because we cannot eradicate it, we can alleviate it or dislodge corruption. And by dislodging corruption, that will start with the leadership being very intentional about corruption. One of the things I think we haven't done in Liberia is that we haven't been able to name corruption as it is. If it is corruption, it should be called corruption. It should be recognized as corruption, and it should be persecuted. I think we have not done it over the years. We're more like, oh, it is my relative, or it is my family member, or the person is closer to me. And so we have not been intentional to give attention to corruption. So someone like, for instance, in the political party of the ruling party at the moment, sanction has to come from Liberia. I mean, from America. The president had the Minister of State for Presidential Affairs. There were a lot of allegations against him from international community and local communities, but he did not give it attention because he was close to that person. I'm suing this person up because I'm close to this person. This person is very close to me. And we cannot run government like that. We cannot enter the 21st century with that kind of leadership. I think if you are my brother, if you are my relative or my friend, and you are found in the act of corruption or caught in the act of corruption, you need to be persecuted. It doesn't matter whether you're my friend or whether you're my relative. So there should be an intentionality. You should be very intentional about naming and persecuting corruption. It doesn't matter who commits corruption.
Right, and I apologize for rushing us. We just have a few minutes, and I want us to be able to spend it on the issues lined up for this discussion. I want us to talk about the trips, Hanson. It is projected that the president spent over $1 million on his 48-day trip. This is monies that could have gone into other areas that have been underfunded. Now, top of your head, what do you think this kind of money could have done for the everyday people of Liberia?
Well, I think in my mind, for me, I have two sectors, which is the agriculture sector and the educational sector, to help revamp and make the sector very robust in contributing to the growth of the economy. But however, this amount of money that was mentioned on the executive management website of Front Page Africa, the state tends to provide accurate data, as because the president said his trip was funded on his foreign partners. So there had not been a clear information as to whether it was taxpayer money, but we presume that it's taxpayer resources because obviously he's a state, he's the president of the country. So whatever he's driving or whatever he's doing, he do it within the state resources. But agricultural sector and the educational sector could be a perfect area for these resources to go if I could be the person to decide such a allocation of it.
Very well. Now, Adam, I want us to talk about the elections. I don't know if we have all the time to be able to do that, but perhaps you could comment on this for me. We saw what happened with the protests where there were divisions within the opposition coalition itself. And for some people, that was a bad sign. So ahead of the elections, what are the options for the people of Liberia? Is there a worthy opposition that can take the place of President Weah if he is no longer worthy to lead Liberia?
Yes, there are a lot of oppositions, and I think they can, but they can by a collaboration. It cannot be done like what happened during the rally. Again, it has to be a collaborative effort in order, because if you notice, Weah is loved by the people. He's almost like he's saying like you're the people president. Even just his arrival at the airport yesterday, I think blocked the entire traffic in the country. The number of people that show up were more than even the rally that was held. The opposition can, but it would take collaboration, it would take alliance in order to do that. Yes, there are people worried. There are a lot of people who can run this country, but it will take collaboration. It will not just be a single party to just let the party.
How do they do that when they can't even agree on a protest? That's the point I want to make, and I'm hoping that you could comment on that. How does the opposition position itself as a strong opponent when it cannot even agree on a protest?
I mean, this has been an ongoing conflict in the opposition camp. So that, I don't know whether it's even going to materialize, because we were expecting it to have occurred. If you want to get rid of this government through the ballot, then you have to collaborate. But they have not been able to do it yet. There is still this division. Every now and then, another person coming up with this, breaking away. And they had a strong CPP that was very functional, that staged a June protest that almost drew the attention of the entire international community. But right after that strong experience, they split apart, and they keep splitting. Even if two come together, they split. So I don't know whether they're ready, but maybe things could change. It's politics, who knows?
Right.
things will change. But they need an alliance in order to really overcome.
Very well.
this,
Gentlemen, I'm afraid we'll have to end our conversation right now because we have to go back to South Africa. But I am grateful for your time. Adam Kine is a political analyst. Hanson Blayon is also a political analyst. Both gentlemen joined us from Monrovia, Liberia, where we have been discussing a protest that took place over there. Right now, we want to take you back to South Africa, where President Cyril Ramaphosa is addressing a national convention at ANC to climax the elections that took place over there.
That we must take to confront the challenges of the present moment and the challenges that we are bound to face in the future. On the 8th of January 1959, the great revolutionary Fidel Castro gave a rousing speech on his arrival in Havana following the victory of the Cuban Revolution. Addressing the Cuban masses, he said, "The people are greatly affected by whether we are going to make a good job of this revolution, or if we are going to make the same mistakes as in the last revolution, or the one before that, or even the one before that one." And he continued, "And so we will suffer the consequences of our mistakes, since there are no mistakes which do not affect the people, and no political mistake which does not have to be paid for sooner or later." As the African National Congress, we have made mistakes, and we've had some missteps, and we have paid for them in many, many ways. But even having found ourselves on the brink, we have been able to pull ourselves back. And we've been able to come back from where many people thought we would stumble and fall forever. Because we know there is no greater task yet to be fulfilled, and that task is building a better South Africa that leaves no one behind. This conference has reaffirmed that purpose and that mission. There is no other reason for the existence of the African National Congress than to unite, to mobilize, and more principally to serve the people of South Africa. That is what the ANC exists for. And let us be clear that there's no other reason for us to join the ANC, and there is no other reason for us to seek or accept election to positions of leadership within its ranks other than to serve the people of this country. Consistent with this mission, the delegates to this conference have discussed proposals that will accelerate radical social and economic transformation. The deliberations and the conclusions from our policy conference have placed the needs and the interests of our people first, especially the working class and the poor. We have outlined the steps that we must take to build an economy that serves all South Africans, and an economy that bridges the huge gap between wealth and poverty, between privilege and disadvantage, between black and white, and between men and women. We have agreed to consider a combination of measures which could include a number of interventions that need to be made to grow our economy, including incentives, tax rebates, and a compact with the private sector to accelerate the growth of our economy and also to speed up infrastructure rollout in a much bigger way than we have in the recent past. We've also decided that we will embark on a number of other interventions to ensure that our rural areas and our townships become areas of economic activity. We are committed to supporting the economic development, yes, of our rural areas through, amongst other things, working together with our traditional leaders to implement the Invest Rural Master Plan. This conference has expressed impatience at the pace of change and has given our deployees in government, in parliament and in legislatures and across society an instruction to act with extraordinary effort, extraordinary urgency and purpose to implement the proposals that have been emerging in our commissions, which will also be confirmed when we meet again on the 5th of January. This conference sets out the path to a society in which every child receives a quality education and in which every person has access to health care regardless of the ability to pay. In other words, it is quite clear that the decisions that we have taken in the past to implement the National Health Insurance have to be speeded up and have to be implemented without any fail. Our deliberations also set out the path towards comprehensive and sustainable social protection and to the provision of, yes, affordable housing and basic services for all. We realized more clearly that the failure of basic services in various parts of our country have increased the lack of confidence that our people have in the African National Congress. And that is why this conference, having deliberated on this, will finalize its decisions in January that we must pay attention to service delivery and quality service delivery to be delivered to our people throughout the country.